And there's a pretty interesting story behind the title of the book, Even This I Get to Experience, right? Can you tell us that?
Yes, I can tell you that. I made a lot of money with my partner, Jerry Parencio. I went into business and lost a lot. And I didn't know how serious my problems were until there was a meeting with that former partner and another group that had looked at everything I was then into. I have a son-in-law in New York, and he knew there was going to be a meeting at which I was going to hear who the hell I was financially.
At what point are we at in your career when you have this meeting?
This is 1995 or 6 or something in there. It's late.
So
the shows are over, and I'm living on the money that we took down when we made the sale. Sold all these shows to Coca-Cola.
Oh, really?
And then Coca-Cola bought Columbia, and that was Columbia owned it. Anyway, it all belongs to Sony now.
Right.
And but this was at a moment after when we went into a lot of things, some young guys and I that I had hired, and it got into a lot of financial difficulty. I understood that I was in trouble, and I asked for help determining what kind of trouble. So this meeting took place at 4 o'clock at a hotel, and my son-in-law in New York knew of the meeting, called me that evening, and I told him what I told you. Oh, I got terrible news. I was, my wife and I were talking about selling the house. I have a place in Vermont, which is kind of a family homestead, and maybe we're going to move to Vermont and so forth. So John calls and asks, and I tell him exactly what I've told you, and he said, "Geez, how do you feel?" I said, "I feel like shit." "What do you mean?" "Of course, I feel terrible." But there's something ringing in my head, and he said, "What?" I said, "Even this I get to experience." So the next morning, he wakes me up at 8 o'clock or 7:30 or whatever, and he said, "Well, why are you calling, John?" He said, "I've got to ask something of you." "What?" "I heard you say once that you want to be cremated. I want you to promise we can bury you." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because someday I want to take my kids, your grandkids, to a stone that reads, 'Even this I get to experience.'" So, I look at this conversation. I'm sitting here talking about myself endlessly. How tough is that? And even this,
such a good attitude for dealing with difficult things.
Well, do you have?
Well, it's hard to be a human being. Haven't you guys noticed?
Yes.
Yes.
We all have trouble with it.
Yeah.
That's the game. You got to. We love the electronic games. The more difficult they are, and this is the game we have to play.
No, I talked to a friend of mine who got divorced and said he had to pay his wife $25,000 a month or $50,000 a month. Could you imagine? Especially when you come from where we come from, $50,000 a month. And I just said, well, that's horrible news, but you've arrived. Because
silver lining.
Well, it's true, and it's a weird thing that you can look at it one of two ways. I mean, you've knew what it was. You have the experience of amassing a fortune. You have the experience of losing a fortune. Yeah. You have both sides of it.
Here's what pointed me toward the sitcom in the first place. I had done the Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, Colgate Comedy Hour, Martha Ray. They were live shows. Mm-hmm. Ed Simmons and I. And we were visited one day by a fellow by the name of a friend, by Phil Sharp. We were in New York. He was in California, but he was visiting New York, came to see us. And he had created the Joan Davis show, if you remember the Joan Davis show, which was on for some 6 years or something. He had 4 kids and was being divorced. And I was being divorced with 1 kid. Mm-hmm. And having a terrible time. I said, "Phil, how's your situation going?" He said, "Fine. All she wants is my Joan Davis residuals. She wants to own the Joan Davis."
Right.
I gave it to her. That's it. And I said, "I've got to do a sitcom."